Chapter 30, Air Brake Foundation Systems and Air Brake Circuits. Day 1, Video 7, Air Governor. So we've got the governor is what controls and monitors and maintains air system pressure, right? So it's constantly monitoring the system pressure, and then it is telling either the unloader valve to be open or closed, so loaded or unloaded, and then it also sends a signal down to the air dryer that tells it when to purge as part of that function also. So all that's controlled by the governor. It's responsible for maintaining system pressure. It does that by turning on and off the unloader valve and also the purge valve on the air dryer. 3 different ports, the reservoir, unloader, and exhaust. We'll talk about that in a bit. We can have the governor located directly on the air compressor. We've got a provision here where the compressor will bolt right onto it. The passages line up and go into the governor. Or if the manufacturer's got something that is mounted in the way, it's not unheard of to have a remote mounted governor, so we can have this governor bolted on up here at the valve cover of the engine, and then just air lines relaying those signals and the air pressures up to the air governor. So the 3 different ports here on our governor, and then we'll talk a little bit about the function of the air governor here internally. So the reservoir port, we've got an air line that we will send from the governor out into the system where it's going to check to see what the system pressure is out in that system. So we'll run this airline a lot of times it's to one of the air reservoirs so that we're maintaining system pressure out there in the system, right? So that air pressure is coming through here and working on the surface of this piston here. We've got a series of springs that get compressed and valves that make the air connections internally here. So as that system pressure is building and building, it's going to work on this surface of this piston and start to move it up and up and up against this spring pressure, compressing that spring until it moves up enough to where our passages line up, right? And now it will send an air signal through this port right here, which is the unloader port. So we've already talked about the unloader valve in the compressor. This is where it gets the air signal from when it's moved up and moved up. So as the pressure builds up and builds up until we get to the system pressure that the governor is adjusted to, it will send that air signal out to my unloader port, and then air pressure comes into the unloader valve, unseats the inlet poppet, and the air compressor is now unloaded or turned off. Off of this port also, we will send another signal down to our air dryer. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the air dryer. And then the exhaust port so that we don't have air pressure built up on both sides of this piston, and that would affect the movement of that piston. So we need to exhaust any leakage or any air that's trapped inside here out. As the system pressure gets up to that system pressure, we unload it, and now we start using the pressure in the air out of the reservoirs. Our pressure is going to drop, and it's going to drop, and it's going to drop. This spring is working against the piston to try and push it down. Our air pressure is dropping, so that piston will shuttle down and move down until it finally closes off the air signal to the unloader port, draining that air out. The unloader closes or moves down, and now my inlet poppet can open and close as it needs to, and it will start charging again. One of the aspects of the governor is the cut in and cut out pressure. So cut out pressure would be the maximum pressure that the governor gets to, 125 psi, 130 psi, and then it cuts out or turns off the compressor. All right. As we start dropping that pressure out, we start losing pressure out of the system, and we want to have no more than a 20 to 25 psi drop um, before that compressor cuts back in. So the cut in pressure is when we allow that compressor to begin compressing again. So the air signal is dropped or cut off that goes to the unloader valve. So we want between 20 to 25 psi between cut in and cut out pressure. That allows that compressor time to, when it's unloaded, to cool down. So it's no longer compressing air, it can cool down. And then once we've used up that 20 psi, to turn it back on so that we just don't overload that compressor.